Good morning. That's my best Scouse accent this morning. Somebody in the chat tell me whether my audio is streaming. Because, it's bad to start your first live podcast covering for Graham if there's absolutely no audio. So come on, chat, tell me, can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you, Paula. Well, welcome to what was formerly the Graham Hughes Morning Brew Show and has now rapidly turned into, as I saw in the chat earlier, the Big Dick Show or the Dicks in the Morning Show, or a number of jokes about my surname, which, 58 years old, never heard a single joke about my surname. I don't know what's so funny. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Graham is taking a well-deserved break, although I noticed he's in the chat, which worries me even more that he's possibly watching. Other people in the chat, Scott, Veg Pie, Saz, Sarah Davis, lovely to see you. Trip, nice bass levels, thank you, Trip. That's I boosted the bass. Because my voice is a lot higher pitched than this normally. I sound like I'm inhaling helium most of the time. But I've got filters on OBS that control this. We went early, possibly 45 minutes before I should have done, which is literally me trying to work out OBS. Here's a thing to stress about Graham's particular set of skills, is that he does this 4 or 5 times a day, from wherever he is in the world normally. And it's a technical setup that I'm sure he's very used to nowadays. But to be handed all of his graphics and connections to YouTube, etc., and confidently think that I'm technical enough to make all of that work is a bit phasing, to be honest with you. So I'm very glad that I'm actually live, but I went live about 45 minutes early while I was testing out the system, and I thought, well, if I stop it, does that stop the broadcast altogether? So it's not an easy task that Graham does every day, and I know you all appreciate what he does. I certainly do every morning. I'm not sure what to expect from this. I'm doing this for about a week while Graham takes a well-deserved break. I'm not allowed to tell you where he's gone. Because of security issues. It's not El Salvador. He's not been deported yet by Nigel Farage, but I'm sure that's in a little black book somewhere that Farage has got. Graham's actually taking a proper break, and I encouraged him positively to trust me with his channel. Mad fool, what is he on? And let me try and do his kind of rant. And last night and this morning I was watching some of his shows back to see what I could take from what Graham does and try and emulate. And I just can't. I'm not Graham Hughes. I haven't travelled to... I have to do the advert here. If you haven't got a copy of the book, you must get a copy of this book. But I haven't travelled to all the countries in the world without using an aeroplane in the fastest time. I don't wear a hat. I'm not ginger. And I tried to fake a Scouse accent this morning, and I was told in no uncertain terms that I should not do that again. So I'm going to explore a story that's not really in the news, and I kind of think it should be because it's in my personal news. So many of you will know that I've been dealing with a second cancer since August last year, and it's bum cancer. So not only can we do something with my surname, we can talk about my arse for a little while as well. And I got some very good news last week, which is that there is no sign of cancer in my arse anymore. And I'm quite pleased that I named it Donald Trump, because it demonstrates that with enough radiation we could get rid of the guy in the same way that I did. Obviously, really good news last week, but it did highlight something for me that has been part of my cancer care for 12 years, really, with leukemia, and certainly intensely for the last 12 months with a tumour, which is that the communications within the NHS and to the patient are appalling. Now, there's been a lot of progress, and I must stop myself as Graham normally would, because we've got our first super chat. Now, what you've challenged me to do here is to see if I can actually make the super chat graphic work, and there is no guarantee of that at all. We can try, and I probably can't. So look, just imagine that the super chat graphic has come up, and I'll work out why that didn't particularly work the way it should have done. But thank you very much for the super chat. Let me go back and try and find it. You are contributing to Graham's lovely holiday by sending £2. And the wisdom on Woden's Day. Hope all badgers are well. Yeah, I hope all the badgers are well as well. As I say, I am well at the moment. Certainly feeling a lot better. Getting the all clear on cancer doesn't mean the pain goes away, because I'm now dealing with the treatment and the results of the treatment. But back to what I was hoping to talk about today, which is how communications inside the NHS and externally to patients is getting better. It's got better over the last 12 years, but it's fundamentally broken. And it's something that the Labour government is trying to address. In their 10-year plan that was announced, I think, last week, Wes Streeting has advocated for using AI, obviously, because everybody has to use AI, don't they, these days, but particularly for looking at the ways that patient communication is done and the way that data is collected and shared within the trusts and within the NHS. So just to give you an idea of my story, I did a Facebook post about this yesterday. I got, on Wednesday, I had to go to Haywards Heath, which is a 30-minute bus ride away, and have a colonoscopy. To be actually clear about this, and I'm hoping you've had your breakfast, it's a flexible sigmoidoscopy, which is still a camera up your bum. And the surgeon, he was a surgeon who was operating the endoscope, told me that I'd got the all clear, that there was no cancer in my rectum. And he gave me a report, which I have a copy here. And again, pre-breakfast, I'll not zoom in on these pictures of the inside of my bum. But essentially, he gave me the all clear, and I have a report that tells me I've got the all clear. Now, my care in the NHS, I'm sure you're all aware that the way the NHS is structured is that consultants within hospitals lead your care. Everything happens top down from a consultant once you're appointed one, and your GP if it's something not hospitalised. But I have a consultant who is allocated to my care, and that was the first doctor that I saw back in August when I went for my first scan, and he was a surgeon. And he offered me the chance to cure my cancer, effectively. In fact, a 70% chance of curing my cancer by removing my anus. And that was kind of a bit of a shock, and something I had to deal with very quickly. But I asked my doctor if there were other options rather than surgery. And he kind of said that there was somebody in the oncology team, a radiographer, who'd got a concept of another treatment for me, and therefore I was referred to go and talk to him. And I chose to go down that path, primarily because he was a much better doctor, a much better communicator. But then that meant that I was still under the care of a surgeon, and then I'd got an oncologist who was handling my treatment. But he's the equivalent. They're both consultants. So I had to communicate with his team. Now, all the time through this, for the last 12 years, I've been dealing with leukemia, which means I have a hematology consultant as well. And I communicate with that team as well. I do blood tests on a regular basis. I have meetings with my consultant, and we monitor and treat my leukemia, which has taken a bit of a backseat for the last 12 months. I then had to inform my haematology team, which I do by email, that I'd got this oncology team and this surgeon looking after my health. And then my oncologist recommends that I go for a trial in Guildford, a medical trial of a treatment called brachytherapy. Now, again, I will spare your blushes, but imagine kneeling down on all fours once a month and having a broomstick shoved up a place that is unmentionable, with radiation on the tip. Enough radiation, the same amount of radiation that you would get if you were on the surface of Mars, I'm told. The upshot of that is that I end up with another consultant, another oncologist, a specialist research oncologist, who's actually an incredible doctor. And that's based in Guildford. Now, what happens then is that my care and the communications about my care fall in between 2 different trusts, 3 different doctors, 4 different doctors really, 4 different Macmillan nurse healthcare teams and support teams, and an app on my phone, the NHS app, that gives me data. The problem is not one of those departments is using the same software to communicate and share the data about my health. So my hematologist didn't know that I'd got a tumour until I told them. My oncologist was very unconcerned about my leukemia and unknowledgeable about my leukemia as well. The surgeon couldn't care less because radiographers were dealing with it and there was no opportunity to chop me up, which is what surgeons love to do. I'm sure they're very good at their job, but you do always have to bear in mind that surgeons really want to chop into you. Now, what that really showed me is I'm what's called an activated patient. I try to make the NHS work for me, and it's important to me that I research my doctors, that I find out how their systems work, and I try and connect them all up with my NHS app so that I have data that I'm able to share. And what's happened this week, which really highlighted the problem, is that I got a phone call from my consultant in Guildford, the one that did the last treatment, the brachytherapy treatment, which is the treatment that really got rid of my cancer. And I had to inform them that they'd done a good job and got rid of my cancer. They didn't know because my medical record with them didn't share the information about the scans and camera work that I'd had done last week. I also had to share that information with my haematology department, who didn't fully understand what the report said. So the only person in that network that really understands my healthcare regime, the treatment I'm on and how I'm doing, is me. And I have to share that medical information with other teams and other doctors and try and help them to find the way to get through the software. Every single nurse and doctor that I talk to about this tells me the system is terrible, but what can you do? It's the NHS. It's bureaucracy. I disagree with that fundamentally. Those of you in the chat that have got any tech background will know that the NHS is a monstrous bureaucracy and organisation, and developing any kind of software for an organisation like that, which I've had some experience of in a past life, is difficult. It's a huge task, but it's not an insurmountable task, and it's something that should be clearly working in the 21st century. Now, Wes Streeting is saying that the Labour Party over the next 10 years, certainly over the next 3 years, will develop the NHS app so it becomes the central point of exchanging data about patients. And they talk a lot about how that will affect the patient. Now, I think it's really important that they involve patient voices in this. Super important. You know, me having to do all of this work means that there are definitely people who don't understand the system or haven't researched the system as much as me, haven't tried to make it work on their behalf, and they're just not getting the information that they need, and they need that information to inform their own medical teams, which is crazy. The medical team should be ringing you and telling you they've cured your cancer, not the other way around. And it's a fairly simple requirement, really, which is that we need a centrally agreed data set, a set of ways of looking at that data and analysing and using that data, which you can then build software platforms on for the various parts of the NHS and patients who can see and use that data. But it should be a holistic system that allows all of that data to be in one place and all of it to be used. Now, my fear is that the government are looking at using Palantir, Peter Thiel's company, to do a lot of this work, and using AI to look at our incredibly old databases. And I don't think we should be putting that level of power and powerful data and important and private data in the hands of a complete fucking moron, to be honest with you. I'm sure he's a very clever guy, really, but the guy's brain is wired in a way that I don't think he treats patient data or patients in particular as human beings. And he has his own agenda, which we've all seen the stories about what Palantir are up to and the power that they have. And you've only got to look at the post office scandal and Fujitsu to look at how government commissioning software can go terribly wrong, particularly when it's a monopoly situation. So for me, it's I wanted to open a discussion with all of you and see if there's comments, because the Facebook post that I did about this yesterday, a number of people were telling me about problems. And some of the problems that we have, if you look at the actual issue here, it's that, good old Thatcher split up the NHS into what are effectively a group of separate, you could call them companies almost, but trusts. And each of those trusts runs as a separate business unit, and it does its own procurement largely, and although it benefits from NHS national contracts, and they get to choose their own software solutions. And that also goes for GPs, who are definitely separate businesses who are contracted to the NHS, and under those contracts they have a certain amount of access to data in the system if the trust have agreed how to do that. Each of these departments, the consultant oncologist, the kidney specialist department, the sexually transmitted disease department, not that I'm currently registered with them, but each of these departments and GPs and consultants get to choose the software their department uses. So, I have leukemia, which is a form of cancer. I have a tumour, or I had a tumour. I don't have a tumour anymore, so well done, Mike. Well done, team. But I deal with the oncology department from that point of view. They are 150 metres apart, these two organisations, but they use completely different software within the same hospital to record data and share scans and information. They don't talk to each other, and they don't really care that much about the other's specialisms. Whereas I do, obviously. I'm an expert on my own illnesses. Like all patients, we are advocates for our own healthcare. So the system is designed for people who, to be honest with you, don't really have a clue about buying software or building software. And they are susceptible to various salesmen who come in and sell them long-term contracts for software. So if your GP has got some terrible software that it's operating, a terrible website to book appointments, etc., it's because the GP was the guy or woman who got to choose which software they would use. Interoperability with hospitals, etc., is less important to a GP practice. It's more about running their practice and their appointment system. Some of them choose well, and some of them choose badly and end up in a 20-year lease on that software, which they cannot get out of, and a particular problem with all their data being held in one place. So there's the problem. It's a massive problem. But I think there's a really easy solution to this, and I think it's a model where you don't have a monopoly contracted by government ministers who similarly might be susceptible to, dare I say it, let's just say, the benefits of a good lunch or a football game or a Taylor Swift concert ticket, who are making decisions about large corporations building software for us. And similarly, we could get rid of the problem of the NHS being able to choose individual different packages all over the place. But we still need that flexibility that they want. So what I'm sort of thinking is that you need a model a bit like the way the web and the internet works, in that there should be a set of standards for how our data is kept. And I think that data should then be made available via an API to organisations, registered organisations and companies who can make use of that data to create useful software. So there's a startup situation that allows companies to license the use of that data and be regulated by the government and the NHS, but also to fastly develop apps that can actually work both for the internals of the NHS and particularly for the patients, so that we actually join the 21st century. Now, a lot of the people that replied to my post yesterday are talking about, just the problems of, right, let's take my mum. My mum is 84, and, she's she's not untech savvy. She can work a Zoom call, and she uses WhatsApp, etc., etc. But she's of a generation that is very distrusting of online registration, online content, of using banking apps, etc., etc. Probably quite rightly, I think, because they are susceptible to scams. So she doesn't want to use these systems. She wants to have a manual system that can override it. And I agree that that's a premium service that needs to exist. But also there should be a simple way for her to access the data that she needs to access as well. So look, let's stop me ranting about this for a moment, because I've got a few facts about countries in the world that actually do a much better job than the UK, perhaps on a smaller scale. And let me just dive into the chat and see how you guys are doing, because I'm not really paying attention to that. You see, Graham manages to multitask a lot better than me on this. So Ivan Ambrose says, "Hi Mike, I'm here now, but just to let you know, I may have to leave early if it gets too much for me." Oh, Ivan, I'm sorry about that. I hope that this is an optimistic view of this subject, because I'm actually very optimistic that these things will be fixed and can be fixed. I'm worried about the priorities of the little troll Mr. Streeting. Graham and Rachel would be the first to say that he should probably focus on this problem much more than he should focus on the problem of trans toilets in hospitals, but he seems to be focusing on the wrong things, as usual. And I just hope that he doesn't succumb to big tech from this point of view, because we don't want people like Thiel and Musk or Fujitsu involved in this process too much. But I hope, Ivan, that it's not too much for you at all. Trip, Joanna Hammond, every time I have to go around a black hole again to get my eggs, I'm going to be pissed. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have read that one. I've no idea what the context of that is at all. Gillian Wren. When I was 19, I indulged a spot of cancer. Well done for hosting that for a little while. Always makes my day to hear another survivor. Yeah, well done, Gallifreyan Wren. I called you Gillian because I can't read at this distance, getting old. But well done for surviving that. And you'll always be a survivor as well. Let's just see who else is here. I've dealt with a fantastic, this is Chris C. I've dealt with a fantastic NHS all my life, and while it has its failings, namely in primary care, I really can't fault it. Hey, listen, the people that work for the NHS are incredible human beings. I've been lucky enough to work with a number of these fantastic human beings. These both scientifically, medically geniuses and emotional geniuses as well, and particularly the Macmillan nurses that are assigned to me. I have no fault with any of the staff battling my cancer on my behalf, and also battling the bureaucracy of the NHS. This is not me knocking the NHS in any way, shape or form. They have saved my life. See, here's the problem with doing live streams, is sometimes you say something that sometimes I say something. I'm not talking in the third person. I'm not Margaret Bloody Thatcher. Sometimes you say something that makes me want to cry. Sometimes I say something that makes me want to cry. It's been a hell of a week. It's a week, pretty much to the day, to the hour, that I discovered that I have that my medical team have beat this cancer for me. And I've got to be honest with you, it's been bloody brutal. It's been a long year, and particularly this year, and the treatment has been brutal. And I think I bottled a lot of that up because I've wanted to be positive and tell some arse jokes about this. But I've been in a fairly constant pain, which has got progressively better, and some fairly, potentially humiliating treatments, with just an incredible group of human beings around me who are struggling themselves with their own internal systems. And I think one of the problems in particular that software development in this space, to make sure that we have turnkey, brilliant and world-beating IT system that can support support our healthcare, both in the public and private sector. I think it's important, I'll talk about that in a minute, that we join up those two worlds, but also across borders, so that if you move to Wales, your medical records follow you, which apparently is a big issue, and similarly with Scotland. I'm told that in Scotland and Wales, there is a better joined up system, but actually if you move back across the border to England, you're buggered at that point. The problems that causes for patients are they add to the stress. I've had an illness which stress is the last thing in the world I need in my life, because it adds to the pain and problems. And I think the NHS inadvertently offering some of that stress up for you is not a good thing. I think I might have just missed a super chat. If somebody can tell me whether I did, let me just scroll through here. You get to, watch an old man scrolling through your wonderful comments, which I'm going to read in a moment. Did I miss a super chat? If I did, I'm sorry. I will find it before the end of the show, and I will thank you. Oh, Kathy. Let me just have a look at that. Reverend Kathy, how are you? £5 super chat. Thank you very much. Please will the NHS stop sending URL logins to older folk with old candy bar phones? Spend my life reassuring and logging in for them. Kathy, that's a big factor. That's a factor with my mum at the moment, in particular, in that I know she's helping others as well with that process, or trying to, and constantly going to training programs to be taught how to do this when she just doesn't really want to do it. I think a lot of what Wes Streeting's talking about in his 10-year plan is good. There's some good stuff in there. There's a lack of detail in terms of how they're going to achieve these things. AI is the magical word that they keep using. But fundamentally, I don't think AI is going to solve a lot of these problems, because there's some really basic planning and strategy issues that need to be sorted out before they can even think about implementing those. And there's also some garbage in there about linking it to your Apple Watch. My mum does not have an Apple Watch. She will not get an Apple Watch. The majority of people being dealt with by the NHS are above the age of 70 and technically not engaged in that kind of technology. We don't want trendy solutions. I don't want, I do. I want things I can just plug into myself and check my blood every day without having to go to the hospital. But I'm ready to wait for those for a few years while you get the fundamentals of this right. When you get the fact that doctors can just look up a single patient record for me and see all of my medical history, all of it. I can't do that. Even at the moment, I've given permission to all of these apps to look at all of my data, and I still cannot see it all in one place. I have to use 4 or 5 different apps to make that happen. But yes, we shouldn't be texting people these things. There should be a voice service. We should be paying for that, basically. So let me just go back to the chat and talk to you guys. Hey, there's a lot of comments, and I'm going to struggle to read through all of these, but let me just go back a little bit and see what we've got here. So, Alistrom Kerr. Mike, yep, it all connected system, 10 years in the making. Congratulations on winning the fight. Bravo. Thank you very much. I didn't win the fight. I posted about this the other day. There's a lot of people say this, that it's when you talk about fighting or battling cancer, I think it's very unfair. I mean, look, in my case, I had a cancer diagnosis that said there was a 56% chance that the treatment that was proposed would cure my cancer. And 56%, that's pretty good odds, but it is a 50-50 bet, So that means that 44% of people that were recommended that treatment, on average, don't get the same result that I got. They get bad news. And And those people are going through the same treatment as me. They're going through the same humiliations as me. They're going through the same pain as me. And the end result that they get is not the same as me. They don't get that joyous bit of news at the end, and they probably head into more treatment, potentially surgery. That's what I was facing last week. And let's face it, potentially death. So it's very unfair to say that they failed to battle cancer. It wasn't their job to battle the cancer. It was their medical teams and the scientists' job to battle the cancer. And what I said in my post was that you don't fight cancer yourself. Your medical team that do that for you. And your body is actually the battleground that needs to heal after the friendly fire that you've received from your doctors and the damage that the cancer did in the first place. So at the moment, I am healing from the damage that radiation, chemotherapy, and large amounts of poking about up there basically have done to me. It's not the cancer I'm dealing with anymore. It's the effects of the treatment. And I see that as my body just, being a battleground on which these two sides had a fight. It's becoming a fairer fight in terms of our medical developments and our doctors and the treatments. And, I'm very grateful that I was on a research program called OPERA to use brachytherapy to treat this, because the gold standard treatment is surgery for this. That has a 70% chance of working, and the treatment that I've had has a 56% chance. So, battling cancer, I'm not a big fan of that, because people lose that war and it's not their fault at all. They're outgunned by our DNA. Paula Thomas. Paula, thank you for the £10. Much appreciated. You're all aware, I'm sure, that I won't be seeing a penny of this. Graham will be buying himself bottles of champagne on your money, but, why not? So Paula says, the trouble is management will always come up with management solutions to every problem. Management solutions mean more managers when problems often require better comms. Totally agree with that. I think the two groups who should be consulted on how this software should work, the two primary groups, are anybody who is patient-facing. That can be the receptionists in colonoscopy departments, in cancer wards, in kidney specialist units, etc., in physiotherapy units. It can be anybody who is talking to patients directly and is having to deal with the internal system, and it should be patients themselves. And I think the doctors, they can write up a specification list for the information that they need, but the people that need to be consulted on this are those not managers, because managers will create themselves roles. Listen, I'm not a proponent to say that there are too many managers in the NHS. I think maybe there's a lack of quality sometimes, because they're competing against the private sector, and you can earn a lot more money working for an AI company in San Francisco at the moment than you can working for the NHS. But I do think that creating software is a process that should be patient-focused, frontline staff focused, and then doctor focused, because gathering the data that doctors can analyze is one thing. Presenting that in such a way and making it available to people to use in a proper way is something that client focused or patient focused people and patients themselves have probably got the best answers for. I don't have Sean, what's your YouTube name, Mike? It's Mike Dix something, I think. I'll try and find that and put it in the chat, possibly after the chat. If you actually want to find me, look for Mike Dix on Facebook, look for Trumpton on Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky, etc. to find my cartoons. I don't do that much on YouTube. This is a new departure for me, doing live YouTubing. I thank Graham and everybody in the Politics Social gang for encouraging me to do a bit more of this. And I thank you guys for being so supportive. I realise you are not getting your morning Graham here, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that you just let me rant on about something that is very personal to me, but I think has got very widespread political issues. Because politically speaking, the question as to whether doctors should be involved in IT procurement is also clearly something that some ministers shouldn't be involved in either. They should be overseeing the regulation of these things, but not necessarily the functionality of these things. So let's just go back and see what you guys are talking about. When are you going to do more podcasts, Mike? Trumpton podcast. We are going to resurrect the Trumpton podcast later this year. The Aidan, who makes the podcast with me, is got married this year. He's a very happy guy, and I was lucky enough to be invited to his wedding in Brighton. Brighton weddings are great. In fact, any social event I don't have to leave Brighton for, I love. But Aidan got married a couple of weeks ago, and we had a good chat about what we should do with the Trumpton podcast and whether we should bring it back, and we are going to do that. So if you want to go back and listen to some old episodes that we did, then go look for the Trumpton podcast on wherever you get your podcasts. I think that's what I'm supposed to say, isn't it? By the way, all the things that I should have said, please like this video so that Graham thinks that I did a good job. Because I'm not sure he's watching. He's in transit at the moment. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. That allows you to get into the chat and make a chat work. And Graham has just gone into the chat, in fact, to say any super chats will be spent visiting Mike, not on champagne. Well, maybe a little champagne or a club soda. Yo. Quite right. Listen, let me encourage you to give us a super chat. I'm not playing the cancer card on this one at all. I'm playing the Graham card. Graham, I met Graham pretty much, well, for the second time when he came down to Brighton with Sympathetic. And that was a joyous event. And if any of you donate a super chat to this show, I will force Graham to buy a train ticket and come down here again, hopefully dragging Tan with him, and maybe even Wayne. And we will get together again in the sun in Brighton. And probably do a live podcast. So I know money is tight. I get how difficult that can be for any of you. But anyone that has got a spare couple of quid, it will be very well used, I promise you. I think I'm missing out on you guys being very supportive of Gallifrey and Wren. And thank you for doing that. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch up with what you're all saying. So I'm going to just wish Gallifrey and Wren all the best with what you're going through at the moment. It sounds like a pretty awful story, Wren. And if you find me on Twitter or Facebook, DM me and let's talk about what you're going through at the moment. We do need more Wayne. You know, Wayne has sorted himself out. Those of you that love Wayne will definitely see more of him soon. He's currently running night shifts as a milkman, looking super fly and a lot less sweary. So, love Wayne. And there's a particular chip shop near my hospital that Wayne wants to visit with me at some point in time, so I'm going to force him down here in his new Audi Quattro. Let's Brighton and Hove actually. Oh, well, it is Hove actually. You're quite right. I've not seen you in the chat before. Be good for Graham to visit Sussex. Yes, it would. It's good for all of you to come and visit Sussex. We are as far down as you can go straight down from London. And Brighton is particularly lovely. I spent the day in the company of an old boss of mine who I kept reminding spectacularly sacked me about 25 years ago. And I was very happy to give him and Tarbor, a mutual friend, a good tour of Brighton and enjoy what was actually quite a lovely afternoon. One angry pagan, I'm assuming, because my chat is cutting you off a little bit. Thank you very much for the £2 super chat. And I missed your £5 super chat. You see, this is the problem. I can't scroll back enough to see the super chats. So let me see if I can look at them separately. I can. Hey, see? YouTube, software that works. One angry pagan, this is your previous £5, and thank you for the £2 to remind me to read that one out. Thank you, One Angry Pagan. It is very much appreciated. Nye Bevin would be gutted to see our NHS now, considering what could be. The institution as a whole needs updating. I hope MH Care provides as well. Yeah, totally. I think if Nye Bevin was looking at the NHS now, he would start from the tech point of view. And he would start looking at a system from scratch that would provide us with the kind of services that we need, the kind of information that we need. There's a thing called patient choice, which the NHS is a big proponent of. It's a government-led scheme. And again, it was a very Tory idea of giving you the choices in your treatment. The problem is that if you're, the average patient is nowhere near as informed as a doctor, and they're presented with these choices that you have about treatment, which you don't really understand. You can go away and do the research, and I have, and I looked at all the risks that were involved in that, but you are put in a situation where you're given a lot of choices. In order to do those choices properly, we need a lot more information, and we need it presented in a way that is usable and useful for us. No, we don't want AI doctors at all. Triaging, okay, I can accept that maybe there's a bit of that needed in the system. And I have actually met some people working on AI triaging for the 111 service, which are really interesting. There's a lot bad about AI and there's a lot good. If we use it for good, it's brilliant. I actually saw a great speech at a conference last week, 2 weeks ago. And I can't remember the name of the speaker, but she was quite remarkable in her views. And the one thing she said was, if we were starting from scratch creating AI, and we knew that we were going to be able to create an incredibly powerful, intelligent machine that could look at, process, and solve problems much quicker than human beings could, and you got all the collective brains of Google and Meta and Microsoft and Facebook together, and even Grok, and said, okay, let's list the top problems in the world that we want to solve with AI. How high up that list do you think we need to be able to make more videos of cats skateboarding would be? Against world poverty, against water shortages, against climate change, against healthcare provision, against the care of the elderly. And I don't think anybody would sit there and say we need more videos of cats skateboarding. We should deprioritize that completely. So if we're going to do AI, I think this government should make sure that it invests, and the European Union should make sure that it invests heavily in making much more sensible, democracy-based AI engines that are designed to do exactly this kind of job. We should not be using American systems where the money from the NHS, from taxpayers' money, is disappearing into the profits of San Francisco companies, buying super yachts for people, and instead should be reinvested constantly in making AI work for us, the people, and not for the billionaires. So that's the subject of another one of these. I've got 5 or 7 of these to do in the next few weeks, so AI is definitely going to be a core subject on there. One Angry Pagan, used properly, AI is a very useful tool for various things. I think the problem comes on over-reliance. I think a lot of people, particularly politicians, are looking at it as this magic solution, and it really isn't. It's just code. It's incredibly clever code and incredibly huge and environmentally consuming server farms. But used for good, that's a good investment. Used to make cat videos, who cares? I did. Kathy, my late husband lived twice his life expectancy. We got married in extra time. His last words were to thank the NHS. Let's keep stressing that, right? Listen, we are allies of the NHS, or certainly I am. I have obviously a huge admiration for the NHS. I'll tell you a story. An old school friend of mine moved to the USA when he was 20. So we kind of parted ways physically in our early 20s. And he now has a particularly southern accent, although he denies it. Lives in Kentucky. And he built himself a great life in America. He became a director of a bank, and he's done very, very well for himself. But he recently had a health scare with his wife, and he was telling me how much it cost for all of the tests that he had to have done, all the decisions he was confronted with on money. And this guy's, quite well off. certainly in comparison to me or anyone else I know. He's a wealthy guy, and he was being faced with decisions about just tests to establish what kind of treatment would be ideal for his wife, and he was presented with a menu of prices. And, in his own words, he said, I would do anything to protect the health of my wife. But when you're presented with a list of things that they want to do and the costs associated with them, even somebody that can afford that is looking at it and saying, okay, $50,000 for these tests, and the outcome might be this or might be that. The money is something that you have to take into account when you're thinking about your choices. We are so lucky in this country that we have a universal healthcare system, which means that my scans in Haywards Heath, which is a 30-minute bus ride away, the bus ride was free for me because I took my NHS letter in saying I'd got an appointment, and I didn't even have to pay for the bus, let alone any of the treatment or the coffee and biscuits that they gave me after they took pictures at my bum. So, we are blessed to have a service like this, and it's going to have problems because it's a massive undertaking to provide that kind of care for a growing population and an increasingly elderly population, and therefore increasingly sicker population. We are not, the NHS is overrun by immigrants in that, I think... I can't tell you in the last 2 weeks that all of I've probably encountered 20, 25 NHS staff, and I would say that a good 60% of them came from other countries to come and work here and support our NHS. And that's where the immigrants are in the NHS as a rule. We are overrun by old people, by my mum and her cohort, and quite rightly, and we need to be providing good care for those people. The NHS is brilliant, but it is not perfect, and as allies we should be critical friends and try and do something about it as well, which I am doing in another world. I am working on ideas to connect with politicians that I know, with the NHS. I'm also doing some work for my consultant oncologist on the next phase of their research. It's going to be cartoons, because I did cartoons of my cancer trip, and that's got me some work. I'm glad to say, with a couple of organisations, including my consultant, so that I'm able to help them communicate better with patients and use a bit of humour, maybe to do some of that work. And Philip says we had all this over-reliance nonsense. Let me just scroll back so I can see that. Now I've lost you, Anne. We had all this over-reliance nonsense when computers first became widespread in business. Oh, but you must owe this money because the computers say so. Absolutely. Faith in computer systems. Look at the post office scandal. Look at the damage that did to post office managers and business owners. And that was because computer says. And in fact, it was Fujitsu says, because they were protecting their fucking profits. And, that's... imagine the damage that they could do in this environment if a corporation if its profits are entirely based on the revenue that it takes from the taxpayer, and their system doesn't work, and they don't want to tell anybody that. So we have to safeguard against that kind of stuff, because that will cost us again in the future, like the post office scandal and the blood test scandal, or the blood scandals have cost us. SG, the NHS should pay you for pictures of what I can only imagine is a really cute bum. Thank you very much. There's a good idea. Maybe I should present my doctor with a bill. Here's a lovely thing about, so when I went for my first brachytherapy treatment, which is the broomstick up the bum treatment, my incredible doctor, who I won't name, but she is incredible, introduced herself while I was on all fours with my bum facing her, and said that she'd added me on LinkedIn. And that's good, because that got me some work later, but it was the weirdest networking opportunity I think I've ever been confronted with. But subsequently, when I got this test, this is a part of how you make the system work for you, because she's a LinkedIn friend and follows me on Twitter. When I said, when I sort of shared a picture of the top of my report saying there's no evidence of cancer, she came back to me and with celebration emojis and saying, "This is fantastic news, Mike." So that was my confirmation from my consultant that report was telling me I was free of cancer. She didn't see it on a pop-up on her phone because of an NHS app that told her that one of her patients was okay. And the first she heard of it was when I told everybody, and that's not right. That's not right at all. Right, listen, we are heading up to 49 minutes of this. I know Graham very often does longer, but I am going to cut this one short just because I'm just pleased we got pictures, audio, graphics working, that we went live maybe a bit early, and managed to actually get through this. And listen, thanks so much for all the comments. I'm going to go back and read a lot of them because I'm not actually managing to take them all in as I read. Again, another superhuman skill that Graham's got. But I can see that there's a lot of good wishes for both me and other people that are talking in the chat about their experiences, including Rick McDuff, basically. But Anne Phillips says the horrific thing about Horizon was that Fujitsu continued to lie and the PO to prosecute victims for a good decade off the system. Absolutely. Those people should be in jail. There's absolutely no excuse for what they've done or the peerages that they got or whatever honours that these managers are given for fucking up people's lives completely. I'm going to go and try something, which is to have a look at reviewing the newspapers. Let's see if we can do that. There's some news that I know has affected a number of people, and I think it's something we should chat about. So let me just see if I can find out what on earth I did with the newspaper review. It's here somewhere. Bear with me. Talk amongst yourselves until we find it. Again, let's just work out the things that Graham is brilliant at and Mike has to share with you that he's struggling. I am hoping now that you can see the newspaper front pages. The first one, Daily Star. Most of the newspapers went with the same story last night, which is the tragic death of Ozzy Osbourne. Now, we're going to say tragic. I have a story about Ozzy myself, that I used to live in Buckinghamshire, and I was shopping in my local Marks and Spencer's supermarket, and I turned around a corner to the freezer section, and there's Ozzy Osbourne standing next to the freezer, looking particularly confused, and looking particularly Ozzy Osbourne. And I sort of stopped in my tracks and went, "Hello, Ozzy," and he sort of looked at me with a look of panic, and then just shouted, "Sharon!" And then clip, 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 round the corner from the next aisle comes Sharon Osbourne and says, "It's all right, Ozzy, we just need potatoes." And they walked out with a bag of chips, basically. And it was like one of those weird... I've had two experiences in Marks and Spencer's. Maybe I'll deal with the other one in another talk. But it was one of those moments where you kind of go, Ozzy Osbourne is just Ozzy Osbourne in general. There was no act there. And it's a real shame that we lost him yesterday. And most of the papers are leading with that. I think the main thing that's lovely, though, in that story, as somebody that's just gone through some quite serious treatment, I think Ozzy was suffering from dementia. But he did manage to pull together a live performance in Birmingham, I think, a month ago, which he knew would be his last performance. And I think it's lovely that that was able to happen for Ozzy. The other story, the Daily Star managed to get in after a very late night victory for the Lionesses over Italy to get themselves into the final of the Euros 2025, is that Lion, yes, we're in the final. As Graham has said, I think a number of times, what an amazing team that is. I'm not really into football. Never really have been. My kids really are, and I do some research every time I want to go and visit them and talk to them about something that they care about. But the Lionesses have really inspired me. I think they're an amazing team. I think it's an amazing manager. This team has changed dramatically from the two Euro championships in which we got through to finals or semi-finals. And they're just remarkable. And I think the thing watching it last night was just the sound of the crowd, you know. I absolutely love the sound of a fully packed stadium with, the primary noise is female voices. And an amazing team. Wasn't the most beautiful football last night, but as many of the players said themselves, look, we win by any means. That's what we do. And they were behind in that game. They were behind against Sweden. And they managed to drag themselves back into a position where I think they just believe in themselves. And I think they probably believe in themselves much more than the men's team do, and have done over the years. And if it was the men's team, the Star would have even dropped the Aussie story, I think, for that one, basically. But, good that they're on the front page. That's important. Di, thank you very much for the £10. I have exactly the same problem. I have the Patients Know Best app on my phone, and I take it to every appointment to show my medical status to the 3 trusts I have to deal with. Totally mental. I agree with that completely. Patients Know Best is a commercial app that GPs use and some hospitals use, but not all of them. It is possible, Di, I don't know if you've done this, to link up your Patients Know Best data with your NHS app, and therefore you can pull all of that data into one place, and it's worth looking into doing that, I think, because I find that very useful. But let's go back to the papers and look at the next story. Daily Mirror, R.I.P. Ozzy, death of a rock wild man, tributes to Black Sabbath legends as he dies at the age of 76. Listen, I know there's a lot of fans of Ozzy out there, and I'm not being disparaging at all when I say I'm a little surprised he made it to 76. That man's lived a life, and I don't think he may be expected to live that long at all. So Brighton and Hove actually saying the player who has spent the season with Brighton scored the equaliser. Exactly. Yeah. And she was amazing. I mean, she's 19? Fantastic player. We've got strength in depth in that team. The Sun goes with Ozzy Osbourne. Fairly certain it was the Sun that led with the story about him eating a bat, wasn't it? And I'm not sure that story was even true. I don't know. Correct me in the chat, but I've got a feeling that it was a man bites dog type story on Ozzy's behalf. But the Wonderful Wizard of Ozzy is a lovely tribute, and that's a great picture, isn't it? That's a really lovely picture of him. Let's see what the Times goes with. On the top there, Ozzy Osbourne, rock star, dies at 76, a bit more subdued. PM's fears for summer of riots in fraying UK. Listen, we're not going to dive into this story too much today, but it seems to me there are a number of people with a vested interest in stirring up anti-immigrant and right-wing hatred, who are positively encouraging riots to happen again. Farage, you fucking know who you are. And you're doing this again. And GB News and all the commentators that are pushing for this, Lawrence fucking Fox, excuse my French, and Tommy Yaxley Lennon. These people are encouraging riots to happen. And anyone that's seen the footage from Epping will know that it's a bunch of scumbags on the street fighting the police, which is, the irony of that is ridiculous. But summer riots is probably something that traditionally we're better at than winning in the Euros. So I'm hoping that the picture there of Kelly, who scored on the rebound on that final penalty in extra time, will inspire us to be a bit more proud of our country than those idiots make us feel. Alstrom Kerr, thank you very much for the £5 super chat, much appreciated. Mike, can you do a video on how to connect all the apps together? I think that may be a good thing to show people how to do that, my friend. Yeah, I'll look into that. Listen, I haven't solved all of the problems. I find out new things every day about this. But I can definitely look into that and see if we can do something on that subject. That's a good idea. Maybe a series of cartoons on that one as well. Joanna, maybe a video on solutions that don't require a mobile phone as well. Yep. Yeah, let's look into that. The rest of the Times, see you on the picket line. BMA confirms strike will go ahead. This is a subject, I suppose, touching on what we're talking about with the BMA talking about the junior doctors strike that's heading our way. I've got a feeling that's not going to happen. I've got a feeling this is all public bravado before a negotiation takes place. They absolutely deserve to be brought back up to standard on their salaries. It feels like a huge amount of money we're giving them, but we have held back their salaries like everybody else's in this country since 2008. And that isn't acceptable if we want bloody good doctors working for the NHS. I've spoken to a number of doctors and nurses myself who say that they're considering moving to Australia or New Zealand, where they are fairly paid for their skills and knowledge, and we don't want that kind of slippage out of our country. I think raising the wages of doctors is a great idea. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph. They lead with Ozzy Osbourne there, lovely picture. They're blatantly not a newspaper that can respond to the good news of the Euros. It's nowhere on that page, but Alison Pearson, my year of weight loss jabs. Yeah, try eating less instead of jabbing yourself to death, basically, Alison. But I'm sure that it would be a fascinating story to find out how she lost all that weight. But who actually cares? Alistair, thanks for the £5 for more funds for the sweary jar, Mike. Well, fuck me, Alistair. That's an amazing, Alistair. Thank you so much for that. I like to think I'm a little less sweary than Graham and Wayne. But the Telegraph main story there is police take pro-migrant protesters to asylum hotel. This is something Supatansky dealt with the other day. This is not true. The police actually helped anti-fascists and not pro-migrant. You know, these people are just defending the right of the vulnerable and minorities to not be terrorised by right-wing bloody thugs. And the police protected those people because, quite rightly, that's the police's job in these situations. They didn't need to be there to protect the concerned parents of Epping. They needed to be there to protect people from this so-called concerned parents of Epping, who are actually just a bunch of right-wing bold thugs. Telegraph doing its job of spinning the news in the right way. And Zelensky facing his first public prospects. I think we'll do something about Ukraine because I have a good friend from Ukraine who can give me some insight on this story. But Zelensky is starting to face some political pressure in a war that's gone on now for 3 or 4 years, and that's understandable. I think that makes some sense. The Guardian, there's Ozzy. All of them choosing some great pictures. There are some amazing pictures of Ozzy. And these front pages are reflecting the plethora of great pictures of him. There's their top story. Israel faces growing outrage over indefensible killing of civilians. Not going to go into depth on this story today, but we might do on another day as things develop. But 28 countries yesterday, led pretty much by Foreign Secretary David Lammy, denouncing not the first time, but at least collectively denouncing Israel's actions over the indefensible killing of civilians at feeding stations. People just going to try and get some food and dying as a result of that is completely indefensible. I don't know how anybody can. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then Streeting condemns doctors as reckless for striking. Again, I think this is just a public argument that they're having before sitting down and hopefully negotiating, because I do not want Wes Streeting to be fighting the doctors. I want him to be enabling them. Daily Mail, I apologise for this. They're still, a week down the Kiss Cam Coldplay meme, and the Daily Mail still hanging on to that one. Everyone's being crazily judgmental about the poor Coldplay Kiss Cam couple. What? That Sarah Vine is defending this couple. I mean, look, it's arguably a very funny meme. Their reaction was perfect. Coldplay's reaction, Chris Martin's reaction was perfect. The whole thing was perfect. It's funny. It's hilarious. I'm not judging them for having an affair. That's not something I'm qualified to talk about. But, defending them? Come on. And then their top story, British Air India, they're actually leading, not on Ozzy Osbourne or the Euros, but leading on British Air India families are sent the wrong bodies, which, if true, I'm not sure how much we can trust the Daily Mail, obviously, but apparently some people have had to postpone funerals because the wrong body, an unidentified body, was sent back to the UK. Fairly typical of the Daily Mail to only be concerned about the British bodies in that flight. And then this one surprised me. This is the front cover of the Daily Express today. And that's... there are no words, are there? That is a very dramatic and awful picture. And I'm not often full of praise for the Daily Express. I'm sure most of us are not. But leading on a day when we got through to the Euro finals, when Ozzy Osbourne died, and choosing to lead on, for pity's sake, stop this now, the suffering of little Mohammed clinging on to life in Gaza, hell shames us all. And hey, well done, Daily Express. I completely agree with that. That's amazing. And then we'll finish up on the Financial Times, who lead with none of the stories we've been talking about. Their main story there is Lynch's estate, which is this is quite an old story about the founder of a tech company in Cambridge who died in circumstances that were interesting, and his estate is declared bankrupt after a £740 million Hewlett-Packard ruling, which I'll dig into a bit more. But again, this is big tech, dealing with millions and millions of pounds, much of which I'm sure came from taxpayers in both of their cases. And then the story of Mike Johnson managing to delay a vote on whether the Epstein information should be released, whether there should be an inquiry, and obviously the Republicans doing Trump's bidding there. As ever, what a bunch of sad sacks. Let's go back to Mike Cam. Listen, I have done my best to give you a Graham Hughes-like experience today. And I am very grateful for all of you hanging around to see it. Trip, it's Mike Dix. Dix is the name. But I'm very grateful for your comments. I'm very grateful for the super chats. Thank you very much for that. Graham will definitely be appreciative, and I will definitely make sure he sticks to his promise of coming down to see me with those funds. It's been lovely to see you all, and I hope that you'll join me again tomorrow, and we'll find something to talk about that's not cancer related. I mean, you might struggle to stop me talking about it because it's pretty much the only subject I've had for the last 7 months, but we will find ourselves something else to rant about tomorrow. In the meantime, thanks for the likes. Don't forget to like the video before it disappears. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for your contributions in chat, and thank you, Graham, for giving me the opportunity to look after your wonderful channel. Have a good day, all of you, and I'll see you tomorrow.